2025 Parks and Rec Commission meeting. I will call this meeting to order. Can we stand for the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call, please.
Baranich.
Here.
Zabel Wolf. Hale.
Present.
Noyes.
Present.
Cornwell.
Present.
Duzick. Snyder.
All right. Any amendments to the agenda?
There are none.
Excellent. Any ceremonies, announcements, appointments, or presentations?
Not tonight.
All right, then we're going to keep going. Any declaration of conflict? No? Okay. And so consent of the calendar. We've got a couple action items. We need to approve the minutes from the September 24th, 2024 meeting. It's been a little bit.
I would move to approve the minutes from September 24, 2024 as presented.
I'll second.
Noyes.
Abstain.
Baranich.
Abstain.
Cornwell.
Approve.
Hale.
Aye.
All right. Any citizen issues?
Pardon?
Oh, meeting, they're approved.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just thinking if we have two abstaining, two approval, I think we're fine.
Are we okay? Okay. So we're going to move along then to any citizen issues. Okay. We have some unfinished business.
So at the last meeting, you folks went through the minimum standards, gave us direction of adjustments to be made, and this was just needed to be brought back. I realize it's been a while, but it's just a formal adoption of the direction you gave us. So we're looking for adoption of those minimum standards. If there's any questions you have on it, or I'm able to answer it, or if I can't, Robbie will be able to. Then I would just be looking for an adoption of it.
I'll make a motion to adopt the minimum standards as discussed in September.
And second.
Noyes.
Aye.
Cornwell.
Aye.
Baranich.
Aye.
Hale.
Aye.
All right, they're approved. Moving along, we've got some new business, specifically around Parks and Rec Commission, talking about merging with the Urban Forestry.
Yes. So last fall, met with our deputy city administrator and city administrator, and the discussion was right now how it works is we do have the Park and Rec Commission, which is a formal commission of the city. Urban Forestry is not, probably 10 years ago, 9 years ago, the city took that commission, took the Historical Society, and there was a third one that they took, and they removed them because they weren't as active or designated as a requirement in there, and they were looking to adjust some of that. It's been a long time. What we did is we made it just a standing committee of the Park and Rec Commission, or a subcommittee. Well, some of the codes have changed. Obviously, we've seen staff change, administration and stuff, so it came back that legal would like us to be following what's current code, and if we have committees, they're actually commissions, they need to be up at the 7 members. We need to create what the full duties are and everything with that. In discussions, looking at numbers they had, looking at direction where Park and Rec Commission is going, it was felt that it would be the smartest thing to do is to combine the two. With that said, it's a little bit easier just to say it than to actually kind of do that. They are a working committee, and Preston, please chime in as I go astray on this, but predominantly work has been done looking at the tree standards, work has been done on the Arbor Day celebration preparation on that. I don't know if, do you folks, if there's a tree issue that a resident is concerned about, is there a review process through?
So for future code, with a future code revision.
Actually, I'll probably have you come up here so that it can be heard, because I know that's.
So we will be going through a suite of code revisions related to urban forestry. With one of those planned code revisions, the current process will still begin, and that is if somebody requests to have a public tree removed, that is a street tree in the right-of-way adjacent to their property, city staff will either approve or deny that removal. If we deny the permission to remove, with a future code revision, they will have an appeal to the Parks and Rec Commission if they're merged, and then you'll hear that case, and so then you'll make an appeal decision. So that would be one of the future roles of the body.
I can think of only one time that it was appealed, and that went to me because that's how it's been set up. So there's that. The urban forestry played a big part in the fuels reduction work that was done at the, so there's some of that. And I believe that's probably the majority of what your commission does.
Yeah, so I give a monthly forestry report, kind of an update on what we've been working on.
So with that said, we're also looking at the Park and Rec Commission, where some of the things have changed. The commission used to be far more active with the number of parks we're putting in and the reviews in that. It has become a little more difficult on putting in a park. We have more regulations to follow. We have, all the permitting, everything, but the biggest factor in that is purely cost. We don't have the available funds to build parks at the rate we were, or as extensive, so it's gotten stretched out, so that's impacted it. We still do the minimum standards that you guys just approved every 2 years. There's, that was probably the biggest one. We don't have a lot of controversy where people come in wanting the changes, but it doesn't mean that we can't do some of that, but it seemed like there's not as much work on the Park and Rec Commission side of it as there was. And even with what is going on with urban forestry, that's a reduction from probably 15 years ago of what they did, because we were creating all the tree standards. There's a lot of, community for canopy, a lot of stuff. So it makes sense to kind of combine some of the works. We continue to give updates on some of the recreation and on the park construction, where we're going with that, but also have the updates on urban forestry. How it will blend together, we have 2 people going off of the commission. Yeah, urban forestry has 3 people on it right now. Do not know if all 3 would want to move over. If that was the case, then we'd probably have to do a lottery on that side of it, because there'd only be 2 openings, but I suspect down the road we'll see more openings. So we just do that blending there. Working out the details is probably the most difficult, but on the same note, it doesn't have to happen, next meeting. It's not like there's this. We'll figure out how to do it, but What I wanted to do was just get your guys' thoughts on that. And also, the second side is, what can we do, I guess, are there things we're missing that would be more engaging for you folks? Or are we missing things that we should be taking a look at? I don't want to have you guys just having to come over here to just approve minutes from the last time. We want there to be viable work and stuff. Same note, I don't want to have a bunch of denials of trees or denials of parkland or whatever, so that you have stuff to do either.
Yeah, I know when we went through and looked at the fee structures, that was one, I
Yeah.
think, the biggest project I was on in the 4 years of being on the commission, with the boat, the whole thing at Quemlin. More work like that, I think, would be appreciated.
And what's happening with the commissions, it's not out of the normal, because you help us with policy. You're our sounding board, you give that vein in there, and as policies have been set, there's less to do. I do know that the city will be looking at rewriting the Park and Rec ordinance over the next year or so. So there'll be a lot of work on that and how that plays a part. So, other thoughts?
I don't know if there's anything more you could bring to us, but I know it just in my time here, it seems to ebb and flow, and sometimes there's multiple parks that, you know, you guys are doing something with or developing, and other times it's slow, and so I guess it's kind of hard to say, like, bring us this or that, but every meeting's different, so that's always fun, I guess, so, yeah.
Well, you're right I forgot about the fee review, but that's a critical part, because we get tunnel vision. You know, we're around all the time, and when it is something that's a big change, it's good to have multiple people looking at it. I know that in the next several years, there'll be an update to our comp plan. The city will be looking at its own comp plan and how that references in, but there'll be some review in that. So, I do know that one council member asked about if it would be good to have you folks attending some of the special events or more of that, and I don't know how you guys feel about that. Some attend them, some don't, but having more of a role of actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us go to events here and there. It's just, do we wear a Parks and Rec shirt? No, but.
Yeah.
No,
Why
we're-
not?
We
It's a
don't have
beautiful
any.
shirt.
What I found is there's not a role there, and so I mean I know with the park openings we did one, but other than that I've attended many, and I'm just another community member, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But let's say if we had the market music where we actually have a booth up, or Post Falls Festival, is that something, manning it for a couple hours just to talk to the public, is that of interest? And you'd get a shirt.
There you go.
Sold.
Free shirt, I'm in.
I would do that anyway, yeah.
But I think that's one of the things with the department is that public engagement, and are we on the right track? The community's changing, without a doubt. And it's making sure that our foundation's there, but we're changing with the needs of the community too. And there will be a park dedication this spring, so that's something to look forward to. Okay, well, if you think of other things or have ideas, I know this will probably be discussed more with Urban Forestry.
How often do they meet, Dave? Is it like us, almost every month?
Yeah, it's almost every month.
Okay.
And I know they've been doing more with some of the volunteer work in the trails, and
It sounds like a good fit, actually.
it's a change, and change is hard because we don't know exactly, but I think everybody has open mind, and we go through the ideas to make sure that we're following the state codes. We did talk about reducing the amount of meetings, but then that changes the notification schedule, so it most likely will stay just as it is, a monthly type of event.
Has a conversation been had with those three about merging?
They've had an initial one, and there'll be more discussion in there. This is your guys' first because we didn't have a meeting in November.
Sure.
So we're trying to do a little bit of catch-up.
So you're saying there's two people on Parks and Rec that their term is up and they're not going to
Correct.
reapply?
Correct.
Okay, and then 3 on Urban Forestry that could come over, but positions for 2.
Right.
Okay.
When would that happen? Do we have a timeline?
Most likely, the 2 positions we have to fill would be in March.
Okay.
So
So do you want any direction from us, just our initial thoughts?
just initial thoughts.
Okay, so no action or
No
anything?
action.
Okay,
This is not an action, it's simply discussion.
okay.
And we'll go back to them asking what more needs to be done and stuff. And, one of the things that we used to bring forward was a lot of the stuff with annexations and subdivisions, but the timing of it, usually by the time we got it and they came to you folks, it was already going to planning and zoning, so it just never worked well. With the big of it, I think with some of the big stuff, that'll come back and, there's projects we're working on. Some of them are out far enough that stuff the commission can be working on, whether it's on the park design, even on the types of trees, all that stuff. And I know Preston works a lot of it through his reviews and those subdivision reviews, so we may just not be communicating as well as we should on some of that. So yeah, if there's thoughts, inputs, you can send an email to me, pick up the phone, I might answer. And we'll continue to have discussions with Urban Forestry. And the only thing I can tell you is, I've been directed to bring the 2 together.
Yeah.
How we finally blend, that's all details we'll work out. We just want it to be successful for all involved.
All right. Any other discussion? Okay. All right, so we have some staff and administrative reports. Off to you, Robbie.
Good evening, members of the commission. Robbie Quinn, Parks Planner, here this evening to present or to take a look at some of our recent park projects for the past year, some that are still going on, and then kind of a look at what we have starting in 2025. So we'll start with kind of some of the past projects from last summer. Starting with Woodbridge. So we did a park improvement project out at Woodbridge. And one of those elements was adding a new shade pavilion here. As you can see, we located and moved the pavilion or the playground over towards the parking lot and restroom. So this is kind of just taking a look at that shade pavilion, located kind of right behind that restroom building there. We removed the existing playground and added a new playground with a 2 to 5 year old area, 2 to 12-year-old area, and then a swing set. And then this is just kind of another angle looking at it from the shelter area, and then kind of some of the landscaping improvements that we've made. There will be some benches going in that are yet to be installed, but those will be going in around the playground. And then the last part of those improvements were the storage expansion. So you can see on this restroom building, where the stone ends, that was the existing building limits. So we added about 15 feet or so, and that's all new, now storage for the soccer that takes on at that site. So there used to be, there still is an old shed on the site, and that'll be able to be removed with this expansion. And then the last part of the improvements out there that are still under construction are the 2 pickleball courts that went in place of the old playground. So that's been paved, the fencing is up, and we're just waiting on the warmer weather to install the surfacing, which will be tiles on this site. So that'll be something new to the system. Instead of painting the asphalt, there'll be sport court tiles, something we're going to try out and see how it works for us. So those are the Woodbridge improvements. Next project that took place last year was the community garden parking lot project. And I don't have a lot of great photos just because it ended kind of at the fall winter timeline, but nonetheless. So obviously installed a parking lot. This is kind of looking towards the Centennial Trail. And then other associated improvements were trails. So this is the new Centennial Trail connection. It kind of weaves through here along the parking lot and then connects to the Centennial Trail. And then we also installed gravel trails, and this is kind of the same area but a different angle. So these also loop around and through the site. And eventually there'll be demonstration gardens where all this will kind of connect and people will be able to meander through. We expanded the back plaza area, so hopefully we'll be able to get more programming on this site and be able to use this patio, which outlooks some of the landscape improvements. Speaking of which, we added a few areas of demonstration gardens, mostly associated with the parking lot permit itself. So the stormwater and all of the shade requirements that were that we had to do for the parking lot. And then next year, we'll be going through and adding a couple more areas. You can see some irrigation heads that are left high. So there's a few areas that will go back in next year, add the topsoil, and add additional plants. And those will be right here, back here, and then around the building. Next project, mostly complete, but still somewhat under construction, is Black Bay. A lot of improvements on this site, starting with the entry plaza. So you can see this is kind of the main driveway down to the site. So we added the curb and gutter, swale, and sidewalk coming in. This is a bench with a wood topper kind of looking into the plaza right here. Then we had the shelter, which overlooks the lawn area, installed some permanent tables and benches, drinking fountain, and site lighting. And then this is just another angle and a couple of areas that we still need to finish for next year. You can see these gravel areas, those will get finished, as well as finalizing this barbecue area. And then this is an angle looking back at the shelter from the lawn area. The entry sign that was installed later on this winter. It's pretty substantial if you haven't been out there yet. It's pretty cool as you're kind of coming down the driveway to see that. And then the lawn improvements, so regraded the whole lawn area, leveled it out, hopefully improved drainage on the site. And then installed these boulder caves, which will eventually be incorporated into the playground area. So currently what they're working on is the boardwalk. So we did have to make a couple changes to the boardwalk just due to budget constraints. When they went out to do some additional test pilings, it was a lot harder to drive the piles than they originally anticipated. So, which ended up being more piles and different cross bracing, etc. So with that, we had to reduce the scope slightly. So you can see on the smaller image, the two red areas are what we ended up removing from the scope, and the larger image is what is currently going to be installed. So we tried to eliminate some spots that that didn't impact the design intent overall. And so this was a picture from last week. So they have kind of this main access right here is what that's looking at. So all those piles are installed and the beams are set, and then they'll lay a couple more rows of beams and then kind of pull off that to get their angle for the other piece, and then start driving those piles hopefully next week. Just another image. And so they're hoping to be done with the boardwalk sometime by June is kind of the goal. Next project for 2020, well, this year, 2025, they started the mass grading or the site clearing this winter. So this is a current picture of the site, pretty flat. And then they have started staking out the ball fields. So this is Montrose. And this is what it will eventually be, 2 adult softball fields in the parking lot. And again, that'll be starting sometime this spring, just kind of weather dependent.
Will they be ready for the summer play at all?
Not this year. We'll give it a
26.
full year of kind of growing for the grass and then be ready for 2026. Quarry, project we've been talking about for a while. So I think we've mentioned that we went after the grant. We were preliminary approved by the state and now has to go to the federal government for review and approval. So just kind of depending on how long that took. We know that Black Bay took a couple years, so hopefully this doesn't take quite so long, but that's kind of where we're at right now with this project. So phase 1, looking at 2 soccer fields, a parking lot, restroom shelter, entry plaza, and then add alternates for a playground and the sports courts. So again, timeline-wise, just kind of waiting on the grant, but hopefully hear something this year and be able to start construction in 2026 on that site. And then the last project for next year will be the Warren Park improvements. So there'll be 2 separate projects, but happening at the same time. The first project will be road frontage improvements along Idaho and 2nd, and those will be curb, gutter, parking lot, swale, landscape and irrigation improvements. And that's part of a grant project. That's why it's kind of separate from the rest of it. And then while that's happening, our internal staff will be doing similar improvements that we did at Woodbridge this year with a new shade pavilion, the playground replacement, pickleball court, and site landscape improvements. So this one will be coming back to you, kind of the same thing we did with Woodbridge when we get to the playground portion of it, kind of sharing some of those thoughts and going from there. And that'll be taking place, both of these will be taking place during the summer in between spring and fall sports at that site. So that's what we got going on. Any questions?
With Black Bay, is there any plans on that? Like, so I know the pylons are too hard to put in. Is there any plans to expand at all for the boardwalk?
So that's kind of, when you look at, this thing doesn't really show very well. This piece was going to be permanent. This was going to be floating dock. So the idea in the future was that this could expand, but based on what we were finding, we figured that was probably unlikely, just based on cost. So that's why we kind of removed that. The floating portion can still go in relatively easily because it's just a couple permanent piles and then it's floating. Mm-hmm. But at this point, I wouldn't say there's probably any plans to continue it.
I could add that one of the other issues has to do with the permitting. You go to a certain length, it changes what type of permit and what are the requirements. So the original was looking at it running along that, the river and going to the west. That could happen, but it wouldn't be connected to this. Most likely we would push it down a little further just so we have enough separation so we don't have to go to the higher permitting. It's a balance in there.
Is it just drilling through stone? Is that the problem?
Yeah, so they're not drilling them. That is an option, but much more expensive. So they're just basically, there's a hammer that's piling them into the rock, and hopefully they're finding fractures. So I don't have a great pic. You can kind of see like this one's a little skewed. There's a couple of them that were like that, and it's basically just how it kind of fell into a rock, and then they were able to get it in. But it's been better than the test results showed, which is a good thing. We've been able to at least get some of them embedded fully, and that was all engineered on what depth and compared to the height above water, et cetera. But these two up here, those are obviously just in solid rock, so they're epoxied into the bedrock, but everyone else is drilled to some sort of depth. I think the minimum we've got is about 4 feet. Some of them are about 9 feet, so. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, wrong way.
Hello, I'm Tracy Stevenson, the Recreation Manager. I'm going to keep lowering it. Robbie did half the job for me. Okay. All right, so I was going to kind of give an update on our activity guide. So people are probably familiar with what it used to look like. I mean, it looks very similar, but I'm going to talk about a little bit why it got changed up. So we decided 2025, it was the year we wanted to do something different. This brochure has been fairly similar for about the last 10 years. And so we wanted to give it a little bit more of a modern look. I kind of wanted it to be look more like a slick magazine. So we'd been working on it. The biggest change, also another thing that prompted us to look into change was our cost. Our costs had doubled in the last 2 years for printing and postage as our community grew, as prices increased. So what we decided to do is if we're going to make a change, we're going to make a big one. So we decided to go from our quarterly brochure down to a brochure that will only be put out 3 times a year. So that saved us in essence by cutting it down $11,500. It's on our budget for that. So that was kind of the exciting thing. And then the fun part was to put it out and go new. So to make this transition, we went ahead and made kind of our little baby brochure. I don't know if you guys may have saw it in your mail. I call it our little mini brochure. And the reason we went ahead and did that is because we knew we couldn't just switch up to, okay, we're on to the 3, and we kind of left out 3 months of our of our seasons for us. So we needed to put out a mini brochure so that people still knew when our sports registrations were, when our classes and so forth. I mean, we didn't want to all of a sudden plummet, not have half what we had in our youth sports. So we did that, and then we went for it and did our new one, and you can see the cover I think is a lot more impressive, and luckily the chamber was nice. They have spent quite a bit of money on getting some nice photography, and so they gave us the picture to go ahead and use. We would love to use more of pictures that are our actual participants in our program. So that is definitely something I'm going to put out there now for you or anybody in the public that might be watching. If you have pictures of your kiddos or yourself in any of our programs, call our Park and Rec office, because it may not be a cover shot, but it may be one of the ones inside of our brochure. So on the new brochure, I should have probably did something so you could have saw it online, but the big thing was just cleaning it up, reorganizing it a little bit. We did a big thing with trying to color coordinate our programs, like all adult sports are one color, special interest is one color, early childhood development, and we plan to keep those colors for all of our brochures moving forward, so someone knows, like, oh, I got a little 3-year-old, I need to look in the red section or whatever. So that was part of the plan, was to clean it. We're still, we're happy with what came out, but of course we're still now going to be tweaking it. Now that it's a working document, we're like, ooh, this would make it easier for people. We're trying to make it really align with our online system too, so the pictures are similar, like the special interest one that's in our brochure would be like the special interest that's in the Day Smart program. Also, we're taking feedback from anyone, so if you've used our new brochure and noticed something or online, we definitely take the input so we can start tweaking our programs. Like I said, now with the brochure coming out 3 times a year, it'll come out January 1 will be one of our brochures. or right around it's January 2nd, 3rd. It's a 16-page brochure, and that one will cover like January through May, so that's a big span for us. So we also, along with this, we're also trying to really improve our social media presence and stuff, because that's where we're going to have to really start pushing people more that way. Our next brochure, and that will be a 16-page one in January, and then if I said that, and then our May brochure will continue, our summer one will continue to be a 20-page brochure, because that's when we'll have a lot more of the parks information, park reservation, the amenities page that people love. So that one will cover like May through September, and then the next one comes out right around September 1, and that will also be a 16-page brochure. And that covers the months of September through January. And you can see we kind of have an overlap. Like if it ends with September, the next one's also going to cover September, because we realize that's a huge span for people to remember. You don't know what's going to go on in your life by then. So it's kind of a refresher to say, oh yeah, there was that class I saw in the last brochure I want to sign up for. So that's kind of the update on the new brochure, and I think it's got a good look to it. We try to put more color in it, more pictures in it. We're trying to do a little bit more like the flyers amongst it, just to go with the magazine. Because our choice was, as we're looking at prices going up and up and up, was to possibly start doing selling the ads. And we're pretty much against that. We want our brochure to be us, and we have enough programs to fill it, so we just needed to figure out how we could scale back the expense of it and still get it out to the public. Anybody have questions on it? I did bring extras, so if anybody needs a new brochure, I'll just leave them up here. Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'll raise it up since I'm the one causing all the issues.
Well, that's going up.
You want to be really tall?
I've always wanted to be really tall.
Okay, you want to go high?
But after 2 back surgeries, I'm about an inch and a half shorter. So what we wanted to do here was just give you a recap of how 24 went. It's always nice to have that frame of reference or a basis of how things are going. So we'll move along with that. Just have to hit the right button. So last year was a year of challenges. We had to make some adjustments, but we saw a lot of successes with it. The challenges were we had a lot of disruption, as you're aware, with construction. Kind of the Falls Park, Camillin Park, that whole corridor in there, the landing, it was hammered. We also recognized that we had a tightening of budgets, where we were able to get some staffing through urban renewal closures. The budgets are getting tighter. It's just the nature of things. And then, of course, staffing doesn't change. We have turnovers. But we were able to hire 3 new positions with that urban renewal. So that was a big year for us. Adjustments because of the dam construction. It had probably the biggest impact and will continue to have a big impact. It's going to continue for the next couple years. So Falls Park access will be what we had last year. The landing with the market, music, it'll be the same thing. With the adjustments, we had a number of grants coming in that took staff time to work on, bring it through. We had the Parkway fire mitigation. That was with Urban Forestry. Did a lot of that fuel fire reduction, and that was very successful. But it was pushing staff time in a different direction, but we had to adjust to it. Robbie had mentioned Black Bay Land and Water. You know, that one was delayed, but also a change that happened is we weren't able to have the whole package. We had actually qualified for $750,000 on it, but because of some of the changes in their interpretation at the federal level, the stuff at the water, because we don't own the water, we weren't able to use it. So had to separate everything out. Impact fees took care of the water part. impact fees and grant took care of that upper part, but we only used 625,000. It's just life. It's one of those unique things. We learned something. That was the first time it's ever been that way for any project in Idaho, and it's that way for everybody now. Then we had a lot of small grants that we just tried to get to offset things. You saw a special event growth where we could with the festival, but then we saw disruption. We didn't have the triathlon. We didn't have the fishing derby. Unfortunately, we're not going to have the fishing derby again this year, but the triathlon will come back, but that's going to take staff time to address that because it's just like starting out new. Big success was the job fair. Going after our seasonal, we desperately live with the use of the seasonal, but it's hard to get seasonal employees. We don't pay at the same competitive rate. So it's just a function of life. So we have to sell that we're fun. That's a nice thing to do and work on that. We saw the camp growth, stabilization in there. We have some really good staff that we've picked up, and we're seeing the consistency, but we're back to that pre-COVID numbers. I already mentioned the Parkway fire mitigation. Urban Forestry staffs for 4 years have been working on the bark beetle management, finally saw it turn around on that. So that was a real positive thing. The park side, they've been implementing the Brightly software. That gives us some of our work and labor data, and that's being used to set for our budgets, just our staffing levels, everything there. And then, of course, I mentioned the 3 positions, 1 in urban forestry, 2 in parks. If you looked at our numbers, because there are people out there that love the numbers, recreation programs enrollment, 11,731. That equates to attendance hours of 181,820. Volunteer hours, 6,478, and that's on the recreation side. Donations and sponsorships, we had almost 60,000 in that. And then the number of business sponsors, that's for the youth sports. So 264 businesses are supporting our youth sports, which is really a positive thing. Now, I know those numbers don't mean anything by themselves.
How do they compare to other years?
Well, that's what I was going to show
Oh,
you.
perfect.
We're going to do it with a graph.
Oh, I
'Cause
like
some people
it.
like graphs.
Yeah.
So we went back quite a ways to 2016. So you saw before COVID. So as you can see that prior to that, we were going up quite a bit. We don't hit just shy of 250,000. When COVID hit, it hit hard. And it wasn't just 2020, but 21 was also an impact. So we're seeing it starting to grow up. We had a little bit of a drop in 23, but we're back to probably that 2015 numbers. So we're making progress. We're stabilizing. The biggest thing we saw a drop in was volunteer hours. And we'd already seen a slight decline, but it crashed with COVID, and it hasn't recovered to the same levels. We're going up a little bit, but not much. Your part-time staffing, we're kind of just bouncing real flat. But when you look at the growth of attendance versus our seasonal staff hours, there's a disparity there. It's just we're learning. In COVID, we learned how to maybe do a little bit more with less.
I'm not understanding the volunteer section on here. So you had
Okay.
almost 100,000 volunteers at one point?
At one point, we had, like a sports team, you could have 3, coaches in there. They had a lot of stuff, so we didn't see as many assistant coaches and everything else. We saw a lot more groups.
Is that
coming in.
volunteers or volunteer hours?
Yeah.
Volunteer hours.
Okay.
Okay, so
Hours.
now we're down to,
6,500.
Okay.
And we're not unique in that.
yeah.
That follows a national standard. And if some of you are involved with different civic organizations and such, you've seen the numbers drop on that and how many people in those groups actually, that are members, that actually go and do the work. It's just the nature of things. So yeah, it was a sizable drop. We don't see the large groups coming in to do a park cleanup or to work in the cemetery or whatever. I mean, it's just how it is.
How is that marketed?
Yeah, I was just gonna.
Well, we do a lot when we're people are signing up, especially with, we're trying to get it, with the business sponsorships. You know, people want to be together. We've always attracted them saying, well, you know, if you're a helping coach, you can get in there, ways to connect in that. We've put stuff out in the brochure. We've had stuff on social media.
About bring your company into, okay.
Yeah. I don't get out to the civic groups as much as I used to. I'm not sure that I brought a lot of volunteers in on that. Yeah. And that's actually a change too. We saw us used to have Mark with New Vision, but you know, some that even they dropped off on what they're doing. So it's just society's changed a little bit. On the cemetery, 88 services, 130,000 in headstone sales. That brings us down to about where we were prior to 2020. We saw a real spike for a couple years, and then it's kind of tapered back off. Urban Forestry last year, they planted over 1,000, or they pruned over 1,000 trees, planted 100. The fuel fire work that we talked about, that was 75 acres. So it's pretty substantial. Just so you know where we're at on parks, we have 37 parks right now. Our acreage is 916 acres. We have 15 sports fields, 19 tennis pickleball courts. That's 9 tennis, 10 pickleball. With this next year, with some of the additions, you're going to see some of that stuff grow, and numbers will go up. We don't grow. You add a person in the city, and you don't grow that way. It's plateau, so we kind of go up and down. Reservations, those have grown quite a bit, 356, and Trailhead was 56. So that's been probably one of our biggest growth areas. So that's what it looks like in numbers over time. Park acreage, if you look at 2016, we'll pick that one because, you know, we've doubled in size in park acreage. That was community forest, a lot of that, but there were some neighborhood parks in there. Our recreation attendance, you can see that 189, 181 here. So that's why I say we're getting back to that number. Headstone revenue, that's gone up, but a lot of it is the costs have gone up. It's a pass-through. We do about 2 times the cost of it to cover it. Shelter reservations, as you can see, from the 47 to 95, it's just about doubled in that time frame.
How many more shelters do we have now?
Oh, I need help on that one. Robbie, Brian? We don't rent every one, but the bigger ones we do. And it's still, if they're not reserved, it's first come, first served. Yeah. We saw a lot of weddings during the COVID time. We still see a number of weddings, but we're seeing a lot of memorials now and birthday parties, so, and it changes. So last year for revenue, out of general fund, that's all 5 divisions. They brought in 1.2 million. So that's your fees for classes and leases, rentals, everything. Special events, 77,878. So that's triathlon if we had it, but that would be Post Falls Festival. That was a major one. Winterfest, Easter egg hunt, all of those. I only add the cemetery capital improvement because that goes into our perpetual care. So that's a portion of the lot sales and headstone sales. So it goes into a separate account. And then of course, park impact fees, our department took in 2.3 million last year. And it still doesn't come close to the cost of construction. The quarry, that phase 1, 5.6, just to do that. You know, to do the whole thing would be 20+ million. It's just, I have trouble wrapping my head around that, how much things have changed. The cost of metal fencing, the irrigation pond, it's up there. Anyhow, the department brought in 3.7 million, and that sounds pretty good, but then you look at our expenditures. We spent 5.4 million. The percentages there, that's how much of, we were budgeted more, but we only spent 83%. The reason is there's some equipment that was ordered that didn't come in. We weren't able to hire all the staff that we need. Some of it is we tightened things up. So, you know, we always try to go over on our revenue, which we did. Our revenue went above budget, so it's kind of like set that low and set our expenditures low, but try and keep expenditures lower than what our budget is and our revenue higher. Special events, think back, we did the 77,000 in revenue and we expended 28, but that doesn't include staff time. So, I mean, we don't account for it because it goes into the general fund. Cemetery capital improvement, we had a refund from the previous year for an item that had been billed extra in it. And then park impact fees, we spent 1.3. Now, if you look, that was only 37% of the budget. It's simply, we had projects that got delayed. All of Black Bay should have been done. But when you hit rock and they can't get the stuff embedded the way it's supposed to be, it has to be re-engineered, it has to be renegotiated. It just takes time. So we spent expenditure of 6.8. So we brought in roughly 50% was offset from taxes, which actually is well above the national average. National average is about 34%. Just wanted you to see that it's not all just charges that we make to, when we look at revenue that we're getting, it's not all just, you know, the fee for the class of whatever. Sponsorship and donations brought in almost 60,000. We're trying to build that up more. You know, obviously we talked about the grants. So we did pretty good in grants last year. This year, if we do get permission on the land and water, that's 1.25 million, which will be the largest we've ever gotten. It also will be the largest that the state's given out for land and water. We also have money that comes in from Avista for management of their park land, and then we have some leases on some of the houses. So all those things come in to try and offset the tax burden. Now, I know some people like the numbers, they like to see the graphs. I like pictures. And the reality is, we still had people at the landing. Maybe it wasn't as packed as we've seen in previous years because you couldn't park down there, but the community was still there enjoying it. Robbie pointed out the construction on Woodbridge there. We tried to do a few things to offset the impact to the community. For the most part, that worked. It brought us some controversy and the playground not looking the same. That's going to happen. Black Bay, that's off of the boardwalk there. That's just the rocks supporting. Most of that stuff is underwater. And that's true with almost everything we do on these parks. Is so much of it is beneath the surface, the irrigation, everything else, that a lot of the costs that we incur, people don't even see. But if you don't do it right, they're going to see it. It's going to pay for it. The top photo was taking care of some social trails. I call them cow paths because I'm a farmer. But trying to address some of the damage to the site, that was controversial. Staff took a lot of heat for that, but we'll be taking some pictures of it later this year and showing just what it does and changes. Because a lot of these changes that happen, they happen over time and people just accept that. So when they see something, a big change, it's kind of shocking. But it was the right thing to do. Black Bay, once again, a lot of stuff was done that the public won't see, but it sets it up to be successful. Our Urban Forestry has been working on the bark beetle mitigation for 4 years, and they finally got control of it. That's the fire there. But besides all the things that we do in construction and trying to keep that infrastructure going, we're still serving the community. We have the youth soccer, youth baseball, t-ball, all that. We have our social events, daddy-daughter, and the big thing is it's connecting our community together. We have our festivals, which worked well. You'll see people smiling. People are actually having a chance to reconnect, relax a little bit. Through all that, we're still mowing. Our cemeteries look good. Our parks look good. We'll be working on bringing in some robotic mowers this next year. We were hoping last year, but supply, order stuff. It sometimes takes longer, but we're trying to be as proactive as possible. But despite the concerns, the worries, everything, the sun still comes up. We still have a gorgeous place for people to call home. So that is a coverage of what happened this year. At your next meeting in February, we're going to go over a little bit of what to expect, not just some of the construction projects, but some of the other programs we're working on. And you will also, the consultant for the impact fees will be coming forward to do that presentation because they're looking at some changes, and impact fees are a lifeblood for any of those park construction projects. But as far as this year, I'm open to any questions.
No questions.
Despite all the challenges and the adjustments staff made, it was a very successful year. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the graphs, too. I like those.
Okay,
Okay,
good.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We've got some good updates tonight. Thank you, guys. Any commission comments? Okay, are we wrapping this thing up? Anything else from anybody? Okay. 6:57. We are adjourned.